Hey everyone, you have made it to the end of your second week of class. I've been going in and reading and responding to some of your daily writes, and a lot of people were stressed last week. I hope that this week calmed down just a little, and maybe next week will be a little more calm, and then we'll try to get into the swing of things as the semester progresses. I wanted to take you to start class today to our class blog, where we had our discussion on Wednesday about the comparisons between Nadine Burke-Harris's TED Radio Hour segment and the book as a whole, the Dr. Mona Hanna-Attisha's book, What the Eyes Don't See. I love reading through, especially seeing the connections that you guys made. Also, how you are really thinking critically as you start to probe this book with questions for inquiry for your Unit 1 assignment. And I just wanted to give props to this student who did a really good job, particularly with these connections. He was succinct. He provided direct evidence, and he also had, a little bit of an introduction and a little bit of a conclusion here. So almost treating this like a miniature essay, or really like an extended reading response paragraph. So I'm just going to read some of it, and it's going to prompt us to look at what we're doing for today, which is talking about how you put two sources in communication with one another. So he writes here, the obvious connection between Nadine Burke-Harris and Mona are that they are both pediatricians in very low income areas. And that's right, he's right. That is the obvious connection, right? Is that we have two pediatricians, both in the different low income areas, with Burke-Harris in San Francisco, with Hanna-Attisha in Flint, Michigan. And they're both dealing with some of the impacts of that. And they are both making arguments about the role that class plays in some of these issues. The student continues here, in her TED Radio Hour, Burke-Harris explains that the child's home life affects worse symptoms of their medical problem. She said this in response to a patient whose asthma would flare up when her father punched a hole in the wall. Burke-Harris also states that trauma affects a child's physical health. Okay, so here's some direct evidence of what Burke-Harris had to say about trauma and how it affects one's physical health, not just one's mental health, which has been the assumption from the past. Here, he's going to shift into Hanna-Attisha and Dr. Mona. It says, Hanna-Attisha also says the more ACEs a child has, the greater the chance of a long-term physical and behavioral health issue. It says here they both make this connection because the patients they are serving do not get the same treatment as others in America. They are often overlooked, underestimated, or thrown away because of their social status, right? So this is sort of how these are coming together and what both of these sources are saying about our society today. And then there's this conclusion. This is what Hanna-Attisha is fighting for and what the eyes don't see. She is fighting for economic injustices to stop, not only for Flint, but nationwide, because it's not fair to the children, okay? Now, this is just a simple reading response that provides evidence and also is looking at these themes, right? We're looking at the role that class plays in some of these societal issues. We're looking at how trauma that's affected to one's socioeconomic status could also affect a child long term. And if you're looking at that long term, you can also think about the community. So if these children are taking these issues into their adulthood, could that really show that these some of the problems with poverty are systemic and they're cyclical? So they're generational, they keep happening. And we see too that both of these are doctors and pediatricians who are now, this student doesn't say this necessarily. It says like they want life to be fair for these children, but they're ultimately arguing that the way to solve our problems is to intervene with children as early as we can, right? So that these children, just because they have these ACEs, they're not doomed to a horrible life, especially with the right support and intervention. So that's ultimately what they're arguing too. So that takes us to today. We're working through the Unit 1 assignment. I'm going to go to the Unit 1 assignment for anyone who is lost and feel like, you're not quite sure where to go. Or if you weren't able to be at our Monday session where we went over this in detail. When you go into Blackboard and you go down here to our Unit 1 tab, you scroll down, and right here you'll see our Unit 1 assignment sheet. So I'm going to pull that back up. And we went over this on Monday, but just as a reminder, remember we're continually exploring this question. So you're going to write an essay based on your responses to this question. First, what aspect of Hannah Atisha's book challenges your previously conceived notions about this country? And you can talk about social issues, environmental issues, economics. You can also talk about intersections of some of these. So, social issues that are tied into environmental issues, like Hannah Atisha's focus on environmental justice. And it says, and through further research about these issues, what have you learned? Okay, so this essay is going to be sort of twofold. First, you're looking at two sources. One you'll choose, and then one is our common read, okay? And then you're going to sort of write your own argument, like how you have been informed by synthesizing these two sources. Okay. For homework for Wednesday, you guys did the inquiry part. So you were writing a lot of questions. You're trying to figure out, okay, what is it about this book that I'm most drawn to? Now is the time to start filtering those questions down to what okay, obviously the majority of these questions have to do with who should be held accountable, right? And so that's where my interest is going to lie. Or the majority of these questions are about kids and like caring about children. And so I really want to look at ACEs and how we can help kids who experience toxic stress, something like that, okay? Then you also did this part where you argued whether or not Nadine Burke-Harris's TED Radio Hour segment was credible, right? And so you're looking at things like, is it current, relevant, authoritative, accurate, you're looking at its purpose to try to figure out if there's bias. And a lot of you in the class blog discussion had some cool things to say, especially about the study that Burke-Harris cited in her video, her TED Radio Hour piece, and what some potential limitations could be to those. So I encourage you guys to read through some of your peers' responses there. For this weekend, though, you're going to work on part 3. So this is actually the synthesis part of this assignment. You see here, I'll describe what synthesis is. Synthesis is an important part of the academic research journey. This is when you take multiple sources, and for our critical thinking project, you will just have 2, and you recognize themes or traits that these texts have in common. You're going to ask yourself these questions about your text. And I'm sorry if you are hearing my dog. The mailman just came. Okay, so here are the questions you're asking about your 2 texts. How do they compare with each other? And then consider their shared traits. What would one author say about this trait? Okay, so think about like environmental justice issues. What would Hannah Atisha say about this trait? And what would Burke-Harris say about this trait if you were synthesizing those 2 sources? What would the other say? Would they agree or disagree? Does one author's work challenge points that the other makes? Does one author's work further explore an issue discussed in another work? And what role does your analysis of the sources play? Does one source rely mostly on emotional appeals, while another source is more researched and academic? So, as you're thinking about synthesis, what you want to avoid is just a summary of 2 sources. Like, we don't need to know every detail of both sources, right? What we need to know is what are the shared traits or themes between these 2 sources, and how are both authors making the argument? And then from those 2 sources and their arguments, how do you kind of create your own truth? So what is ultimately your argument, leaving these 2 sources behind? So it says here, the final part of synthesizing 2 texts, and all of this must be done before you ever sit down to actually write your essay, is the act of creating something new through the integration of these 2 texts or sources. So that's why we're doing so much preliminary brain, just brain work, right? Brainstorming when we're thinking about our questions, considerations of our sources, and then this next step, which is what we call the synthesis dialogue journal. Okay. So how do I do this part? And you guys will have the weekend to do this. You're going to bring these notes to class on during our Monday session, and we're going to talk them out. Okay. So consider mapping dialogue between your 2 sources. Write as if you were the author in the synthesis dialogue journal below. Include page numbers or paragraph numbers or timestamps if they're podcasts or films as you write the dialogue, and these notes will help you later when you begin drafting your essay. Okay, so I give you an example of what the synthesis dialogue journal would look like. Okay, you're literally going to act like almost you're interviewing these 2 authors. What would they say to each other? Okay, so in your chart, you're going to have your common trait. Okay, so our example here are ACEs, the adverse childhood experiences. Okay, what would author 1 say, and what would author 2 say? So here you see it says Hannah Atisha would say, "Hi Nadine, in my book I'm really interested in how ACEs contribute to some of the huge disparities in Flint, especially the life expectancy for children. Did you know that there's a 15-year difference between life expectancy for Flint children compared to the average American child?" Okay, Burke Harris, what would she say back? You're going to write this out. "Hi Mona, I'm a pediatrician too, and a lot of my research is in ACEs. It actually started in California, and I'm interested particularly in the effect of poverty on ACEs and childhood life expectancy. But that disparity is insane. And that disparity is insane, but it's actually common in places outside of Flint. In fact, most impoverished communities experience life expectancy disparities related to ACEs." Okay. So even though Hannah Atisha's book, if you think about it, most of her research is focused on Flint and Flint children. Burke Harris is interested in research that relates to her kids in San Francisco, but also shows that there are these disparities throughout the country. So we come back to Hannah Atisha. What would she say, right, about ACEs? "Exactly, Nadine. Through my book, though my book explores the water crisis in Flint, I try to push much deeper into the crisis than just water, particularly in looking at ACEs and their outcomes on our children's long-term health," right? And then she says, "Oh, well, in my TED Talk, I discuss some of these. Adverse effects can include everything from heart disease to diabetes, mental health issues, and suicidality," right? And so you continue to put them in conversation, right? What would they say to each other? How might they question each other, right? So here it's, if I'm playing with this idea of them in conversation, Burke Harris says, "I'm interested in ACE scores themselves and how the higher the score, the higher the possibility for adverse health outcomes. But what's even more interesting is looking at the brain development of children. I'm wondering if that research could be connected to the Flint crisis." And then Dr. Mona, well, in what ways? And she says here, "Consider this research about stress hormones," right? And so we would consider this dialogue and how would they be talking to each other and sort of working these things out. There's a blank page so that you guys, if you wanted to print this, you could, and you can put these in conversation with each other. Or you can all just do this in, you could do it on a Google Doc, in your notebook, anything like that. These notes are going to help us get to what we're going to be working on Monday, which is how to take all these notes and figure out how to write a claim, which is essentially a thesis statement for this paper. Okay, so let's go back to our assignment sheet. Oh, we're on the assignment sheet. I'm sorry, our calendar. To look at what you need to do for today. Okay, don't forget, by the end of the day today, you need to finish the Evaluating Sources RET Lab module. So if you haven't done that, go ahead and finish it by the end of the day. After you're finished adding to our responses below, any questions that you have, then you need to go in and do your daily write for today. Fridays, we call them meme the day, right? So you put in a meme that shows how you're feeling this week, and then do a reflection kind of based on how the second week has gone. You can feel free to even reference your goals that you set on Monday. How have you been doing with that, etc. Okay, for the weekend, your homework is finish the Ret Lab module, and then go ahead and confirm your second source for your Unit 1 project. So figure out which source you're using. If it's one we've used for class already, you are welcome to do that, or it can be a new source. So it's going to be up to you. Then with your chosen source, you're going to do part 3 of this project, which was that synthesis dialogue journal. There's a sample there for you in the assignment sheet with the Burke-Harris piece. So you're welcome to use that as sort of a model, but you're going to do that same exercise as for your source, the source that you choose for this project. Now, to turn this in, you actually are going to put this on your own blog space. What you'll do is take a picture of your notes, okay? Or if you end up doing electronically, you don't have to post a picture. You can just do a new post and put your notes in there. But you're going to post it to your personal blog space. I would like y'all to categorize that as process work instead of like a daily write or a unit reflection. Remember, there is an add category option, so you can add category and add process work, and it'll stay there once you've added that category for the rest of the semester. Okay, and then here, prepare questions for our Wednesday session. I forgot, yeah, we're not meeting on Monday because it's Labor Day. I hope y'all have a great long weekend. We will meet all together next Wednesday. So next Wednesday, you're going to bring your dialogue journal. Your notes, just have them with you when we meet together, and we're going to kind of talk those out and talk about how to take those notes and make a claim for this paper, okay? So in the space below, for today, you don't really have to post anything unless you have questions about this assignment. Anything that you need cleared up. So I'm going to get into the space tomorrow after you guys have watched this video, and whoever has questions, I'll make sure that I get back to them about that. So if you're wondering about this assignment, if anything seems unclear, if you're struggling to find a second source, anything like that, then post your questions below in the comment section and I'll be getting back to you. Okay? All right, guys, happy long weekend. Again, I will not see you on Monday. I will see you next Wednesday. Just use the Monday session link on our Bitmoji classroom when we all meet together, and I'll send you a reminder next Tuesday. All right, happy weekend.